Hello, everyone.
Okay, good morning and good afternoon for those who are closer to GMT time. We have our first panel, Newest Developments in AI. Your moderator will be Carl Selig and panelists will be Mark Mueller-Eberstein, I hope I said that right, Kashyap Kompella, and Kumar Dev Chatterjee, I hope I said your name right. And I think we're still waiting on Farsam. Farsam, are you here? Okay, so I guess let's get started. So Mark is the CEO of Agitech Corporation, managing member of Codex 3 Investments, angel investor and faculty at Rutgers University's Center for Management Development. Kashyap is CEO at RPA2AI Research and has 20 years of experience as an industry analyst, P&L leader, management consultant, and advisor to leading companies and startups across the US, Europe, and Asia Pac. And we have Kumar Dev. He is a serial tech innovator, serial entrepreneur, World Economic Forum expert, and London's most influential people in tech, Progress 1000 list. He is also a Forbes Tech Council member, autonomous economy expert, and keynote speaker featured in global mainstream media. All right, and your moderator, Carl Selig, is the CEO of Chain BLX. Over to you, Carl.
Thank you very much. Okay, so thanks for the introduction, Thelma. Probably we want to give everyone from the panelists also like 1 minute or 2 minutes of free time to introduce themselves. And let's start with, let's start with Mark and we go then around.
Thank you, Carl. It's a pleasure and honor to be here. Again, it's great to have the Digital Davos coming together, not only in Davos, but giving us an opportunity to reconnect with some new old friends and make some new friends here as well. Thelma, thank you very much for the introduction. I think you did a very nice job there. And especially the pronunciation, Müller-Eberstein, like Einstein, really, really well done. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes, the last name is German, you're right. I'm born and raised over there, but I live in the United States for about 20 years now. I came here with Hewlett-Packard and Microsoft. And for the last 10 years, run a consulting business called EdgeTech. We are helping executives to understand the opportunities of technology and how they can get a competitive advantage out of that. And that is originally based on my first book. I wrote a couple of them over the last year, so they're all on Amazon if you find them. In my main time, I'm a part of the Seattle-based angel and investment communities. I'm a member of the Alliance of Angels. Bill Gates founded that here in Seattle. Bill Gates' father, sorry, founded this here in the Seattle area. I'm a member of the Swan Fund, and as you mentioned, I'm a managing member of the Codex 3 investor groups, who are all angels and super angels that are investing in the blockchain space. The other investment areas, of course, are across the board. Technology, of course, especially here in the Seattle space, we have Microsoft, we have Amazon, very much focused on AI and cloud computing. A lot of innovation happening here, a lot of really smart people trying to shape the world of the future. And I'm very excited to be part of this discussion and to learn from my fellow panelists.
Okay, thank you. Next one. I really don't dare always to pronounce your name. Let's try. Kashyap.
Yep. Thanks, Carl.
Did I say it right or not?
You got it right. Yeah. So
thank
I
you.
go by Cash Kompella to make it easy for everybody.
Okay, thank you, Cash.
So I run an industry analyst firm, a technology industry analyst firm, and we primarily do three things. One is we help large private equity companies when they want to acquire or invest in AI companies. Next, we help businesses leverage and become successful with AI. And thirdly, we help governments and government agencies with their national AI roadmaps and AI policies. So of late, we've also been doing some work around AI ethics because that has become an important topic. So like Mark, I also wrote a few books, and my most recent book has become an Amazon bestseller called Practical AI. And I look forward to being on this panel. Thank you.
Thank you. The next one, do we have Farzan Shara already on, or?
Yes, it doesn't appear that Farzan is on, so should we pass over to Kumardev?
Okay, let's pass to him. Could you please introduce yourself?
Thank you, Carl. Thank you, Thelma. Thanks everybody for this session here. Very glad to be at Digital Davos 2021. I was there in 2020. Of course, that was in Davos. This year is different. So I have a history in tech and innovation, entrepreneurship for almost 25 years, and also the corporate world. I have a computer science background. I built a large number of companies. My latest company was focused on the autonomous economy. So it built a service called the Autonomy as a Service company, effectively getting drones and robots to work together and as a team. I am a member of the World Economic Forum's Expert Network, also a part of the Forbes Technology Council. Yeah, I've been speaking at a lot of places, featured in various media like CNN, Bloomberg, Forbes, BBC. I'm a member of the London's most influential people in technology, the Progress 1000 list. And that's about it, really. Happy to be here and share some insights with my fellow panelists.
Thank you very much for the introductions. Let's start with the first question. There's always some misunderstanding of AI, and I know everyone here on this panel are experts, and I know our audience is expert. But also, as videos will be later on provided, probably for people which are not so much experts. There's a lot of misunderstanding from AI due to Hollywood and probably other sources. Can everyone please explain what does AI mean from his perspective? Let's start with you. Please go ahead. Okay, sorry. Let's start with Mark. I just see in the big screen, so I was saying that you.
Oh, no problem. No problem. Happy to get started. I mean, it's a very wide topic, of course, artificial intelligence, and it has been hyped over the last decades, but it's not a new invention. I mean, we are talking in the computer science space about artificial intelligence for decades. Machine learning, where we're taking data and really allow our computers to parse the data and drive concepts out of it, insights, share those insights, act on those insights, that is not really new. What's really changing over the last years is the computing power on one side, it's the quality of the algorithms, but most importantly, it's available data and the amount of data that we see and what can be derived out of it. We have seen AI in more ways than most people realize today. It doesn't matter if you're talking to an online bot, using your cell phone and getting application suggestions, all of these things have now some form of what some people would call artificial intelligence in it. It's not only, of course, we have language understanding from Siri to Alexa to Google Voice, but it's going far beyond that. It's really deriving insights from data and turning it into actionable activities for either computers or people.
Thank you. Kumardev, what is your understanding what AI means for you?
Well, I think fundamentally, I'd like to break it down a little bit here because we have a diverse audience. The word artificial intelligence to me is and always has been a misnomer. It sort of seems to pretend that we are trying to create an intelligence, which is, I don't believe is exactly what AI is all about. What we see as AI today is effectively an intelligence that is a collective of data that has been processed and has been made and has been brought into a form where the data can actually provide us automatic insights, right? Now, what's going to happen going forward, looking at the developments that are going on, to me, AI is more than just the data that we have today, it will take on a form of its own, but it will not be artificial. It will actually be quite real, right? So to me, AI is really real machine and data-driven intelligence that we are creating using code, and which will at some point be able to code itself, if that makes sense.
Great. This will be, wow.
Yeah. So if I may add,
Okay,
I think this is a fantastic question to start with, because in fact, I start all my sessions with defining what is AI, so that everybody is on the same page. So in fact, there has been this pandemic of AI washing previously. You see that a lot of the companies, because AI is hot, they want to claim themselves as AI, but research shows that not all AI companies are AI companies. So if we understand what is AI, a lot of the confusion when we talk about AI comes because we don't separate these two terms, artificial narrow intelligence and artificial general intelligence. The one on the right side, general intelligence, is the stuff of Hollywood. That's where we fall in with machines, we fall in love with machines take over the world, etc. But really, what our scientific community at this point in time is really working on narrow intelligence. The idea that I think both Mark and Kumar spoke about this, a machine's ability to do a task extremely well, even better than humans. So that's AI. So nowadays, I mean, for the panelists and not for the panelists, but for the attendees who are listening, it always I give you a thumb rule, which is when you read about AI in the newspapers, they are very specifically referring, 99% of the time, they're referring to a subset, a branch of artificial intelligence called deep learning, because that is where we have seen a lot of progress in the last 5 to 10 years. So for all practical purposes in the newspapers, when you see AI is changing something, they're referring to deep learning, which is a branch of machine learning using artificial neural networks. I'll sort of stop here. Hopefully that gives some context.
Okay, thank you. I didn't know even that we can screen share. That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So just jumping on top of what Kash just said, I think it's thank you for putting this all together. I think this really clarifies it nicely. And I think you mentioned the buzzword thing. I mean, as an investor, we see it every time. I mean, startups are coming to us and using as many buzzwords as possible. Today it's AI, blockchain, IoT a few years ago, and ideally you put them all together at one place, and then you're trying to raise money. So yes, it's very clear. Being clear of what it is and what it's not is extremely important. Thank you, Kash, for putting this together.
Okay, we have also like an understanding that a lot of people are afraid that AI will kill their jobs and that there will be not so much job opportunities and computers will replace humans. A tradition which was going since the industrialization, where sabotage comes in, where people throw their shoes in the machines because they were thinking they lose their jobs. And we know also all the developments gives more jobs. But with AI, probably people are more afraid. Can everyone please elaborate? What do you think does the development AI mean for job opportunities in developed countries versus non-developed countries? Who wants to start? Or okay, Kumar Dev, sorry.
Yes, thank you, Carl. The reason I wanted to start on this is actually I have pretty strong developed views on this. I think that we need to be very realistic and honest with the population at large, is that AI will destroy not only jobs, but industries, right? That we see today. A lot of the things that we are doing today at manual labor or manual labor with some value add will disappear, from the cashier to the loader to the delivery person, to even the person who helps you select objects in a store. These things will disappear, will be replaced by robots driven by AI, and that is a foundation of what I call the autonomous economy. Autonomous economy has started, it's growing. The FAA just made it possible for drones to be flown at night and over people. It's a massive change that will change the way the United States approaches AI and the deployment of AI and autonomy over the next 10 years. It's going to be a huge boost. And you will find a lot of the things that today, the delivery person, for example, from Uber Eats will tomorrow just be a robotic vehicle that you'll just open with your app and take your food out, and that's it. You'll never meet the delivery person. Chatting to somebody is already done by bots, unless you are lucky enough to get on the phone. And a lot of these industries will disappear. So let's be honest about that. And a lot of these low-level jobs, or maybe it's not fair to call it low-level, but maybe a job that doesn't require a lot of detailed analytical skills will disappear, right? So we've got to be honest about that. And that is definitely what startups are aiming at, companies are aiming at, and even governments are aiming at. Let's be straightforward on that. The Great Reset talks about that too. What I think is not talked about is the fact that AI will also create jobs. It will create new industries and will create new ways in which human beings will be able to use the intelligence and their skills and their analytic skills particularly to develop new products and services and new ways of interacting with each other, right? That is not possible today, or that is barely possible today, and so we don't think about it. So Kashyap mentioned about narrow intelligence. That's where we are. We haven't got to the AGI, the generalized intelligence yet, but we will at some point. And what that will do, this transition from narrow intelligence to generalized intelligence, is it'll open up new industries and new ways in which we can interact and build value. So yes, AI will destroy jobs, industries in the short run, but in the medium to long term, there will be new opportunities that will be created because of AI.
Kash, Mark, do you second this, or you have another opinion?
No.
I think Kumar is right. There will be a tremendous transformation happening. I mean, we have seen it with every technology wave. So it will impact how people live, work, interact with each other, and interact with organizations. And it has an impact on how work will look like. I mean, come on, we have all seen over the last year how the world of work can change in a heartbeat. And artificial intelligence will have, or is already having a very, very significant effect. I mean, Kumar mentioned call centers and how you interact with folks, support on from technology to customer issues, but even like scheduling appointments. All of these things have already changed, and it was only going forward. Yes, and it will create opportunities. Every time we have seen new technology, there will be opportunities for people as well. But it's up to us to leverage those opportunities and not be standing still or being frightened and in shell shock, but really trying to figure out what does it mean for our environments and how can we benefit. Having said that, it comes with some social responsibility for us as well, because there will be people that are left behind. It is that in our human society, we have to think about how we deal with those folks that cannot, for whatever reasons, work through the transition from one society to another society.
So I would like to add and probably bring in a different angle to this. When we say that a particular technology, AI in this case, is going to replace a certain set of professions or jobs, so we still have to split that. For example, there are jobs that robots, physical robots have to do versus what software can do. If you look at the state of maturity of the different technologies, robotics, for example, it's not as mature as some of the cognitive or the software related stuff. So the impact, everybody agrees that there is going to be transformation of industries, countries, societies, etc. But what is the pace and what is the period over which that transition is going to happen? Is it going to happen in the next 5 years, 10 years, or is it going to play out over a few decades? So, and even within a society, for example, it's going to affect different professions differently. There'll be opportunities for which, I mean, people who are ready and who have those skills will be able to grab those opportunities. But at the same time, there'll be people who won't be able to capture or who lose their livelihoods. So it is really up to the governments to create those social safety nets, people who may be falling off the bandwagon.
Thank you. This is a question which everyone here also sometimes is asked to consult, and it becomes in the field of AI. Now, just in one sentence, what you should be aware of, and in one sentence, what you should look for when you hire an AI consultant. Mark. Okay.
So the first one, what do you look? When one said, "What do you look for?" I think you have to understand that AI will introduce a lot of more efficiencies. And again, we talk about call centers, but it's also lawyers. A lot of activities that can be automated will be happening. And an AI consultant, well, there are far too many people out there who can barely spell AI, so it's hard to put like 2 letters together, but claim to be AI consultants. And it's not only the small companies, it's also the large ones. I mean, we have seen large companies pushing a lot of traditional IT consultants to a 2-hour online class and now calling them certified in blockchain technology or AI technology or whatever it is. So it's really doing your homework and interviewing people, making sure they understand not only the basics, but really what does it mean for the technology mean for your business? Because the key at the end of the day is you want to make sure the technology helps you and your organization to be more efficient, more competitive. So do the consultants understand that interference and that overlap?
Thank you. Kumandev. So what is the most important thing for you, what you should look to when you hire an AI consultant? I mean, he has to fit the project and so on, but what is the biggest warning sign to not hire one?
I'm going to be quite short because you want it in one sentence. The biggest warning sign, if he uses AI jargon, right? The last thing you want from a consultant is a parroting of jargon to try and impress you that he knows what the topics are, because he probably doesn't. And yes, you need to look at exactly what you do in any other consultant is that they need to understand what your problem is, how can it be solved to give you the outcome that you want, and then where AI may or may not fit there, because not all problems need AI, right? You don't need to bring a hammer sometimes when you need a chisel. So look for somebody who doesn't give you the jargon and who tries to understand what you're trying to achieve before telling you how AI can help you do it.
Great. Kash, what is for you the biggest warning sign?
Yeah, I'll keep it very brief. Ask them if they can demonstrate how business value is going to be achieved. Don't hire somebody who is in love with technology. And if somebody is an AI cheerleader, that's a big red flag for you, because they should be giving you a more balanced perspective.
Kumandev, I would like to follow up with what you said before. And there is, how do you see the threats from smart viruses which are AI-driven attacking our systems?
So at the risk of being politically incorrect, sorry, and I don't mean to upset anybody, it's just a joke. I think the smart viruses, the Russian programmers, right? Because they just took over the entire US intelligence system by embedding code in a download of a intrusion management software. I wonder what kind of intrusion it was managing. But okay, the question that you asked is very valid. And I think to me, smart viruses there's 2 problems or 2 dangers there. One is that the virus becomes smart and we don't know about it. So the Google experiment where you had 2 AI programs talking to each other, they invented a language and then they were talking in a way and communicating in a way that nobody could even understand what they were doing. And was it diabolical? Who knows? But at least we didn't understand. So I think the first thing is we run the risk, especially when we go into AGI, artificial generalized intelligence, is that we are going to create intelligent nodes or intelligent entities that will have their own life and will be able to do things that we will not detect because it is beyond our capacity to do so. The other danger, I think, is AI in the wild, as we keep talking about. Of course, you cannot control these things, but if you imagine the whole range of human diabolism over the last thousands of years, and AI is potentially more intelligent than us at some point, past the singularity point, is it not fair to assume that AI can be more diabolical than we can even imagine. I think it's a fair assumption. So the combination of the two, that one, we will not be able to know what the smart viruses are going to be, and two, the fact that they can be really more diabolical than we imagine, is together a danger that we can potentially put there on the list of threats. How real is the question, and how near is the question. I think we are a little bit way off, so we can still probably survive a decade or two before we get to that point.
Mark, Cash, any comments to this? Thank you very much, Mark.
I think how near are we to it and how real is it is, I think that's a great way to put it, Kumar Dev. So see, viruses, smart viruses, if I take a business point of view, it's always a cat and mouse game. So you have to always be one step ahead of whatever traps lay for you out there. But I worry that, in fact, in today's environment, it's the people who are creating the viruses that are smarter than the people who are guarding against them. So we can expect a lot of hacking, a lot of incidents to come to light as AI improves and increases adoption. Because AI also opens up new surface vectors. It's not just AI is used to create viruses, but if you use less than secure AI, you open up yourself for a lot more attacks than traditional software.
Great, thank you so much, Mark.
Just adding on top of that, I think both Cash and Kumar put it quite nicely what it looks like on the virus side itself. Kumar touched a little bit on the issues of we not understanding what AI is doing anymore, and then we're getting relatively close to what values do we teach our AI that is going to implement it. And probably most of you have read the Homo Deus book by now, but it's really interesting to think about what do the algorithms do, and how do they treat us? How do we humans treat non-human consciousness, souls, intelligent potentially, because we are superior. Now, if we are creating a superior intelligence, and yes, Cash, we are far away from the general AI for sure, but if we are creating it and that AI would have our values, how would they treat humans? Well, it's an interesting question to think and ponder about.
Okay, thank you. So I see we are short on time, but as the Serbian House will not take place, we can go over in each panel a little bit, if this is okay with you guys. Panelists, are you okay that we go over time a little bit? Yeah, everyone is okay. So everyone has a good example where AI is used and how much it saves you in cost and so on. And for your experience, I want to have one example where people tried to use AI and it was absolutely not necessary and it was misused and it should not have been used. Is there such an example, or is it in general you can use AI all over? Probably, Cash, you want to start? I see you moving.
Yeah. I will actually take this a little above into a slightly broader direction. So one of the challenges that I see is really about the commercialization or the monetization of AI. For example, we've made tremendous progress in the last year in terms of AI research itself, be it AlphaFold, GPT-3, DALL-E, Dota, you name it. I mean, the state of the art really has been moved. But at the same time, MIT Sloan Management Review and BCG have done a survey, and they recently came up with the results. This is the 4th year they're doing their survey. And they found out that only 11% of the businesses that are investing in AI are actually seeing business benefits. So that's a big number. And this is not like small companies that are trying, that don't know how to do it, but this is real large organizations, mature organizations who've been doing it the right way. So there really is that challenge in terms of how do you extract value or how to extract benefits from AI. And that's why when you ask the question of how do you select an AI consultant, that was my number one question. Go with somebody who can show you the path to the business value when you use AI. Even things, for example, like Google's DeepMind. Some people in the industry argue that it's really a marketing lab for Google because they lost close to $1 billion this year. Not everybody can have that kind of money. And one of the Canada's most well-known AI companies called Element AI. It's got like the best of the best researchers. They've done tremendous work. I've learned a lot from them. But it's still, they were just sold off in a distress sale. So people are really struggling with how to capture the benefits and values from AI. But I also suspect that's because in the short term, it's tough to extract value out of it, but in the long term, as it came out in the other questions, responses to the other questions, in the long term, we'll figure out a way.
Okay, thank you. So we have a lot of biases in the design from AI. How do you think to overcome the biases in AI? Probably, let's start with Kumada.
Thank you, Carl. This topic is very close to my heart. How do we get over the biases of AI? I don't think we need to waste everybody's time here by talking about the most egregious examples of that in the last couple of years. One with the Microsoft bot, but then the image analysis bot from Google last year. And the question sorry, the answer is actually in very simple in a certain sense, is that the bias doesn't come from the AI, the bias comes from those who code it. And it is mostly a hidden bias. And the bias is because we don't think we are biased. Most of us don't think we are biased. We all have biases, we don't think about them. And so when we code or when we build something that is meant to be intelligent, we forget to account for those biases and make the necessary adjustments. And then we let the code run wild, neural feedback, understand, adapt, and it starts from the wrong foundation or from a foundation that is flawed, and that is where the bias comes from. So I don't personally believe that AI by itself is biased. I think the people building AI need to have bias training for, especially for hidden biases. We all are biased in one way or another, perhaps in multiple ways. And to be able to identify that when you're building AI is one thing. But the longer term solution to that is to actually have a framework that detects bias and identifies it just like we identify it now by looking at the results. So this is a problem that needs to be addressed. It's fundamental given where AI is going, particularly with your view on the autonomous economy. But it is not a problem that is very hard to solve. I think it just needs some attention and some security effectively.
Yeah, I think, Kumar, you're right. It's the bias of the developers and of ours, all of us for sure, but also the bias in the data we're using to teaching the machines. They're teaching the algorithms we are building. So we have to be very careful. And I think there's lots and lots of examples in the facial recognition side now that are publicized. One of the things I'm using with my students frequently is actually from the early 2000s, while I was still at Microsoft. We were developing an automated phone system, and it was developed in India, and it worked fantastic for me in the prototypes. But when we were teaching more American accent, it started to get worse and worse with people like an accent like me. So it is really, really important you have it clear on what kind of data you're putting in, how you're selecting, and how you're training your machines and making sure they are aware of what's happening.
Thank you. Okay, so we have a lot of investors. Sorry, Kash, I forgot you on this thing. You have something to add?
Yeah, I write a column called AI Ethicist in which I address these issues. So if you just Google AI Ethicist and Compilla, you'll find a lot of my thoughts on this.
Okay, thanks. So we have a lot of investors which are listening to the video and listening like this. So when we see different subsets of AI, machine learning, neural networks, evolutionary computing, vision, robotics, and so on. I mean, we all know it. So where would you tell them to look, in which kind of sector to look for? new companies developing something where you say, this is the most relevant sector in AI, or are they all equally relevant? So when you would have to invest in one of the sectors, would you diversify your portfolio amongst all them equally, or would you put more money in one of the sectors from AI? And which one would you prefer, or which ones, how you would distribute your money? Who wants to take this question first?
Yeah, I can go. So Kumar, they will like this because I think drones are a hot area, and he's working in the area of drones. Also, I'm bullish on warehouse automation and warehouse automation robots. That's an interesting space. Cyber security, and particularly because of the times they were living through, healthcare and automation. So these are some things. And autonomous weapons and defense. These are some of the areas that I'm bullish about in the AI space broadly.
Yeah, just seconding Kash, I think IT management in general, security for sure, but also like load balancing, cloud computing, data center management. I think there's a lot of opportunities there. It still has been untapped. Automation in general, I think that goes healthcare. What do you do with the data in general? Those I think are key areas. And really looking at the specific team and their competitive advantage. So can they compete? And mostly it depends on their capabilities on one side, but what kind of data do they have to train their environments? Somebody goes out and says, I want to build a new voice system, and I want to compete with Alexa, and I'm thinking about I have 100 people just figuring out where the period in a sentence is. How can a startup with 5 or 10 people compete with that? That's just not going to happen anymore. But there are niches and areas where a lot of value can be created, and then if you have the right team with the right approach and data, then I think a lot of magic can happen.
Okay, sorry guys, because I know another panel is starting. I would like to go ahead. I want just to confirm with the panelists, which are on the next panel, which is Damani, David, and Benjamin. I know I have here, and of course myself. Damani, is it okay with you that we are going on like in 10 minutes? Okay. David? Okay, so definitely we go on in 10 minutes because I don't hear from them. Edgardo?
Yes, in the chat, both Damani and David.
Yes,
yes, it's fine.
Okay, thank you very much. This is perfect. So we go on in a few seconds, and I would like just to finish the AI panel because it's a really interesting and really relevant panel, as all our panels, and we got more time, and this is, let's use it.
So if I want to close off that question, yes, thank you very much, Kashyap and Mark. You've covered it all. I put a wrapper around what you said, and the wrapper for me is the autonomous economy. It has 3 areas: Industry 4.0, that's all the warehousing, logistics, and related industry, smart manufacturing, etc. Number 1. Number 2 is smart cities. I think we are going to increasingly live in larger, more complex and smarter cities, and the COVID-19 and the pandemics are accelerating that. I don't know if you all noticed, but we are increasingly carrying an app that tells everybody where we are, and in the later on we'll actually be able to detect whether we are sick or not based on our cough and self-quarantine us very quickly. And that's just the start of what a smart city is going to be. So Industry 4.0, smart city, and the third one is undoubtedly human interaction. We have yet to use AI. Have any of you taken part in an online event management platform that is AI driven? No. Even with Hopin being very good, we are far away from an AI-driven event management platform or an AI TikTok. right? Or an AI or website creator, although there are some that are doing that. So if you put a wrapper around this, that's what I call the autonomous economy. This will unleash a whole new area of economy. But if you're looking at AI Industry 4.0, AI smart cities, and AI and interaction, you will not go wrong. Outside of this, AI and space, which includes defense, but that I believe is a little bit more longer term. I think we're still a good 10 years away from AI and space. Although there are some weapons now, but there's still AI in space is some time off. The last one is AI and medicine or life, but for longevity. I think the AI longevity space is very interesting. Early research being done now. mRNA will absolutely accelerate that, but it's when you infuse mRNA with AI to be able to dynamically detect and react to diseases and to conditions, that's when you really achieve a longevity of a scale that we haven't had before. Again, this is more today research than reality. But yeah, those are the areas.
Carl, it looks like you're muted.
Sorry. So I had Fassam couldn't join our panel. I had a question which was especially marked for his expertise, but probably one from you want to overtake this question. If not, we go to the next question. Could somebody emphasize on predictive analytics and its involvement in augmented reality in respect to AI? Okay, we jump to the next question.
I think there's a question on 5G. I can take that one. That's my area.
Sorry, you would like?
There seems to be a question on 5G from Patrick Slattery. Yeah. I could take that one. That's my area. That's where I'm.
Okay, perfect.
So Patrick's question for everybody is that what are the opportunities afforded by 5G in developing AI solutions at the edge of the network versus traditional centralized designs? So in a nutshell, Patrick, that's what we've been doing with my last company of my long list of companies. And there are a lot of companies working in the space of developing AI solutions on the edge. It's a huge area, and 5G is going to unleash that. The fundamental issue with that is how do you distribute the data storage and access, not the compute storage and access. That is increasingly well done with edge computing, with a drone on a chip from Qualcomm, for example, and other advances in that area. But it's about the data. If you have 100,000 nodes of data moving at different speeds on the ground, 5G cannot cope with that. So you need 6G for that, right? But the general direction is that, yes, AI will enable you to have data and compute on the edge. And therefore, all of us will have a chip or the other, and we will be the edge. And the AI will be running in us. So it's a great area. Just be a little bit careful in terms of the timing. I think we still are a good half a decade away from really scalable AI edge solutions. You don't want to invest in another element AI kind of situation, which is very promising, as Kasha mentioned. Ultimately, it was a distressed sale because it was ahead of its time, too far ahead of its time. So AI and the edge and 5G are coming together. We are getting solutions. I would say that the scale up is going to happen 3 to 4, 5 years away.
Thank you. Now a more light Hollywood related question. We all know films like The Matrix, The 13th Floor, and all the realities where films start to go to the problems. I think so. I am, and about AI and all these themes which always came up. And we know also from quantum computing, the double slit experiment, what we only see becomes real and not real. And working with AI, it opens a whole other thought process. So working with AI and becoming a specialist in this, how did it change your world view? Let's start with Cash, and go ahead.
So the question is, as AI becomes more and more capable and all the things that we see in the movies become reality, how does our worldview change? So, I mean, that's a very interesting science fiction-like question. I think Kumar Dev was saying that we are going to become the edge. So in that sense, I mean, I think Elon Musk is already doing talking about Neuralink. So we are going to anthropomorphize robots and AI maybe in real life, not just in movies. You see some of that happening in elder care robots in Japan and whatnot. So there is probably going to be a more easy acceptance of robots. Right now, you see some videos where people are trying to harm robots that are wandering around. They're coming for delivery. They're coming for, you see all these robots going around. So we will probably arrive at some sort of a different equation between man and machine as machines in the robot form proliferate.
Thank you. Anyone wants to take?
I mean, we're very close. So joke aside, but we're very close of a world between HAL on one side, the Terminator on the other side, playing war games from the 1980s. No, seriously, but I think growing up in a time where artificial intelligence, computers have been part of the media for all of us, I think, and it definitely leaves an imprint in our heads, for sure. But as Cash just said, I think we are going to be, our world will be transformed in smaller steps than we maybe, like in smaller steps than we are fearing maybe. But when we look back 10 years from now, we will have seen how much of our life has been changed by technology, and especially artificial intelligence, machine learning, how we interact, how we work. I think a lot of these things will be very transformative. And looking at it back in hindsight, I think we will see it, of course, clearer than what we can estimate right now, but it's going to be significant for sure.
Thank you. So there is 2 more questions, and let's try to keep it like by 30 seconds per person, as we need time between our team to get ready for the next channel, and there will be a 5-minute break. The next question is, if we are starting a new decade, what is your prediction AI will be at the end, in the next century, in the next decade? How will the AI looking? Who wants to take this question?
I can take the question. I think it relates back to the last question. I'm going to make a bold prediction here, which I think I'm personally betting on and I'm investing on as well. I believe that in 10 years from now, you're going to, the one thing that will happen, and the one thing that relates back to last week, is that we are all, or most of us, are going to have an AI friend. And this AI friend will be both physical and virtual at the same time. So it will be a virtual avatar that will follow you around on your smartphone or on your hand, because you'll have a computer integrated into your hand or whatever it is, or on your Neuralink thing or a Neuralink infrastructure. But it'll also be actually a robot that will look humanoid, that will be next to you, will be in the car seat next to you, will sit outside and wait for you outside of office, will go with you to the doctor. You've all heard about the Japanese guy who gets paid to do nothing. We're going to have an AI friend, all of us, that's going to be there to be accompanying us and being a part of our lives, and in fact, keeping us sane and alive. And that will be a fundamental change. A robot will no longer be what Sony tried to do, the robo-dog 20 years ago. It will be a reality that we will live with every day, and our robot friend, we won't even call them an AI friend, robot friend, they will have a name. So mine, for example, might be called Louis, and yours might be called Robin, but we will all have a robot friend, and that will be the crowning achievement of where AI is going in all the direction that it is now taking off. And is it scary? To a certain degree, yes, but let's face it, if one thing that the pandemic has taught us is that we are increasingly living in isolated pods, and we are going to need to be able to supplement that and be able to have someone or something that can help us out in our daily life. And that's where the AI friend will be a reality within the next 10 years, is my prediction.
Thank you.
Right. So,
sorry,
I'll take a quick 30-second stab at it. I agree that a lot of the world is going to be mediated by these virtual assistants for us. But I also worry that there is going to be a gap between digital haves and digital have-nots that will increase even more so in the next 10 years or 20 years.
Thank you. So the last question, Mark, how do you think that startups in the field of AI can compete with giants, Google, Alibaba, Amazon, and the giants? What chance do startups have?
Yeah, just reiterating, I think what we touched on earlier. It's really about finding the competitive advantages. Like, where is the area where the specific team, with the data they have access to, building on tools that are already out there and freely available often, creating real value for customers. I think this is where the edge can be for startups. There's no point in competing with large conglomerates that have nearly unlimited data available to teach their algorithms, but it's really focusing on what is the unique value that particular team can bring to their customers, and is it proven already? Can they really demonstrate that value is?
Okay, thank you. So thank you for your time in this panel. I would suggest that we make a pause till 11 o'clock. I would need to speak with Edgardo and Lini on Slack. So when we go offline, Lini, can you, and we will be up with the next panel, which is offshore banking with David Ross, Benjamin, and Damani Braham. Thank you very much. And we will be live again at 11. We leave the forum on so that everyone can communicate. Just, I will go with my team just in a quick recess that we can speak.
So we do have a question and answer. If the panelists would like to take a stab at it. It's from
Ed. Can you make the question and answer, Lini?
Yep.
And then I speak with Edgardo myself. Okay? I
can do that.
Thank you, everybody, and very nice to be here. Thank you, Carl and Thelma and Edgardo for arranging this. It's a pleasure. Very nice speaking with you, Mark and Kashyap. And please feel free to connect. I'm happy to discuss this offline as well. And if Carl or Edgardo, if you could send us your background is very interesting. I would like to have that as my Zoom background for this.
Thank you. I will, we will do it. And Thelma, thank you for going ahead for the question and answer. I ask the rest of the panelists to stay on.
So yeah. Thank you. So,
Kumar was right away off. Okay.
Thelma, you mentioned the question in our Q&A session. Do we have time to talk about it for about a minute?
I'm open, if you're open.
Because I think it's fascinating. Edmund is asking about, I don't know if you read, countries and cultures find their identity through artistic creation, visual arts and music. And I think there's a lot of interesting things happening over the last 10 years where you think about applying AI and algorithms to the creation of, or the interpretation first, and then even the creation of music and visual art experiences. So, and it's hard for the audience sometimes to even decide which one is which one has been human created, which one has been AI created. So I think we are going to see new expressions. Some might be completely AI created, some might be human AI combinations. that will build on human creativity and potentially artificial intelligence, but also collective human creativity brought together by AI. So I think it's a really interesting topic, and looking forward to see what's happening.
Is it okay if I jump in here really quickly? So there's actually an Instagram account. It's called inspirobot.me. And it's an AI dedicated to generating unique inspirational quotes. And this robot takes a quote, pastes it on an image, and posts it to Instagram. And you can scroll through them and see some of the things are a little bit weird. And then some of them actually seem like a person came up with them. So if this account didn't say exclusively, I'm a robot, how many people would just think it's another person? I just found this account very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's becoming the Turing test for art, right? Is it human art? Is it artificial art? Is it an elephant drawing a picture? I mean, well, what is it, right?
Well, some humans draw like elephants anyway, so.
You have seen my pictures, right? Okay, no. No. Yeah, exciting times. That's for sure. Well, thank you very much, Kash, Kumar. Really pleasure meeting you online here as well. Thelma, thanks for setting this up and making sure we're all staying on track. And Carl, thanks for, again, putting another digital Davos together in the new world. And I really, really hope we'll all get to meet in person again, maybe 22.
Yeah, in person, hopefully next year. Fingers crossed, good vibes.
Until then, stay safe, right?
Thank you.
Stay safe.
Bye.